So now we have a layering mask for our girl selection. So I'm going to select my layering mask right here. And I'm going to go ahead and grab, I could do the eraser tool, or I can find any tool to kind of select and eliminate that. So we're going to use black, and let me paint it on. Do a very small brush. I'm just eliminating that selection a little bit, cleaning that up. And another thing we want to do is we want to paint grass over the girl's feet to make them look like the feet are actually in the grass or on top of the grass. So we're going to take a sample of this grass. We're going to grab the clone tool, take a sample here nearby, so maybe right here. And then we're going to do a new layer. It's going to be on the very top. This is going to be titled Grass. Call it Grass Overlay, Girl's Feet. And so we're going to make this really small. We're just going to paint a little grass over her feet. Just a little bit. Just to look like she's actually in the environment. Okay, great. So now one of our biggest issues is we have lots of different lighting going on and lots of different color profiles. So when I zoom out, overall it looks good, but it looks like there's 5 different photos put together. And so we want to make sure we harmonize all that and they all look like they're part of the same photo. So next we're going to study how the lighting is hitting each photo and how we can change it to make it look more cohesive. So one more photo, I wanted to add some birds to the top of the environment she's going into in the sky to kind of add a more mystical environment. So it's not just a plain sky. So I just opened this photo and I want to be able to punch out that white background. I'm just going to do something called the magic wand tool. Since this is a nice simple color, I should be able to select it and just delete all of that. So I'm just left with the birds. And now I'm going to drag the birds into this environment. They're going to be pretty small. I'm going to make them pretty small, drag them in, and they're going to be in the sky here. All right, so I'm going to move this layer behind everything, behind the door, but on top of our background photo there. And just like that, we have our birds. We can add a layering mask here. So we're going to go down to layering mask, add that. Of course, if we want to eliminate something with the layering mask, we paint with black. So we're just doing the paintbrush tool and eliminating that selection. So if I ever wanted to get other birds in there, I can always edit my mask and get that back without having to grab the original photo. And I'm seeing a little bit of a glow here, see from our photo here. So I just need to go ahead and select the layering mask here on our little background photo and just kind of paint with the black tool and eliminate some of that glow. I guess I didn't crop it perfectly, did I? Just kind of doing some cleanup work. Make sure there's no issue over there. So we kind of have the basis of our drawing here. I'm going to go ahead and add the smoke, and then we're going to talk about the lighting. I'm going to kind of wait until I have everything set up, and we'll do the lighting last. So this is kind of a fun part. We get to paint on with the clone tool some of the smoke coming out into her environment and really drawing her in the environment and trying to make all this work together nicely. So we're going to go ahead and toggle our layer so we can find it. There's our layer. I'm going to go ahead and grab the core, not the layering mask, but the core photo. And I am going to get the clone tool, and I'm going to sample somewhere in here in the middle of the smoke. I'm going to create a new layer. This is going to be called smoke. Or I guess it would be fog, wouldn't it? Let's call it fog. It's not really smoke. So fog, it's going to be our top layer. We're going to be painting coming out through here. And I'm actually going to put this fog layer, we're going to have 2 different fog layers. We're going to have a layer that's going to be behind her and a layer that's going to be in front of her. So let's go ahead and drag this underneath our girl. Let's see if we can title this. Where's our girl? I know she has a layering mask. There she is. Let's go ahead and title her girl so we can keep track. So here's our fog layer. It's going to be behind her. So let's go ahead and paint it on with the clone tool. We're going to do a nice big brush. We're going to make it nice and fluffy. All right, so we're going to have some smoke kind of coming out and around her. Okay, and now we're going to do one on top of her. So we're going to drag this on the very top, and this will be fog top. We're going to do the same thing, maybe make it even smaller. We're going to just have a little fog going over her shoe to kind of bring it in a little bit more. And we can go in with the dodge and burn tool to bring out some more dimension with this fog. So we're going to do that next. Let's go ahead and grab, we can grab our dodge and burn tool here. So let's do a burn. We're going to add a little bit of shadows. Let's do a nice small brush. And this is going to be the fog that's going to be on the bottom. So let's call this fog, let's say in front of the girl. So that'll be front and this will be fog behind. Okay, so we can keep track of all of these different layers. It's going to start to really add up. Okay, so now I'm on the fog front. So this is the fog that's in front of the girl. We're just going to add a little bit of shadow to it. Make it look like it's billowing out, adds a little more dimension to the fog, makes it look like it's coming to life. Okay, I'm going to get the eraser tool and kind of clean up this selection a little bit. And then now the fog front. Let's add a little bit of shadow, just grabbing the burn tool, adding some shadow here, adding a little bit of dimension to these clouds. So you notice how that kind of makes it look a little bit more realistic. I'm just taking the eraser tool. You can clean up your fog a little bit. You can make it more misty, and so I have like a 17% opacity. You can make it more misty right there where she is, so it just doesn't harshly end. So I was able to play with the smoke a little bit. I'm going to show you kind of how the smoke looks. So this is the smoke I ended up having for the front. You can kind of see the shadows that I painted there, and I have this little tiny bit in the front of her, just to bring her into the piece a little bit. I'm going to add one more layer, and I already have my clone tool still with that same sample. I'm going to paint a little bit behind the door, and I'm going to drag it all the way down so it's behind the door, and just so that it looks like the smoke is coming out and it's kind of coming behind the door just a little bit. Okay, and so we can delete our old smoke. So now we need to cast some more realistic shadows. So as we know, the fog is going to be casting a shadow. So let's add a shadow fog. This will be shadow fog. I'm going to drag this below pretty far down. In the layering system, we're just going to paint on a little shadow for it. It's not going to be, the closer the shadow, the more distant the fog will be. So we're just kind of painting a little bit. I have a feathered brush. And I'm going to reduce the opacity on this. We don't want it super strong, just a little shadow, just like that. So I just wanted to show you a little problem I ran into, and this is why I included this in the lesson, so you can kind of figure out kind of solutions to problems that you have. So remember when we painted on this grass using the clone tool right here, we kind of had it overlay. The problem when I add shadows to the girl, I'm going to go ahead and add a new layer, paint on, those are getting in the way. So one thing we can do is do a different way of, since we're having kind of a complex layer profile here, we're going to need to do something different. So let's go ahead and eliminate that grass. Let's go ahead and take our girl selection and go ahead and get her layering mask. And what we're going to do is we're just painting on with black to remove or trim away from this layer. And we're going to trim away from her selection, the grass, that way. So we're just taking the eraser tool. We're going to have it pretty small. We're just going to go up and kind of bring some grass her way. And so we're deleting from her selection, so we're still going to be able to cast shadows a little bit nicer than what we had before. Okay, so we're just erasing from her to get the same effect as what we had when we painted grass on top. Just because you don't have to do that every time, but it all depends on what you're going to end up doing. So I'm going to go ahead, I had the fog away, so I'm just going to bring the fog back in. Now I can create a new layer, drag it below our girl, and create our shadow. I'm just doing the paintbrush tool, and this is going to be the hardest Photoshop manipulation project so far. So don't feel like you're lost. This is a pretty tough one. Lots of different steps, lots of different tools we're using. So there's kind of a quick little shadow for her. It's probably just going to be cast on one side. So just adding a little bit right here, a little bit in front of her. Nothing dramatic. And then we could take our eraser tool and do pretty low opacity and just start trimming and feathering our little shadow selection. And it depends on where your shadow is going to be cast. Right now the lighting source is ambiguous. There's not a direct lighting source at all. And you have the night sky, but you don't see a moon and you don't see a sun. So right now we have the choice to make our lighting source. So if we want to have our lighting source, looks like on the door it comes here, and on her it kind of comes down as well. So we can kind of commit to that type of lighting source, which is kind of a top-down lighting source, which means shadows will be smaller. If we had the sun over here, it would cast a long shadow of the door. So for example, if the sun was here, the shadow would be behind the door like such. I was kind of showing you an example. It'd be cast like that. So we can kind of create whatever lighting source or direction we want. It looks like the lighting source is coming this way, so maybe we have a little bit of a shadow there. Go ahead and drag that underneath everything and reduce the opacity. So just kind of playing around with shadow. I also think the shadow of the fog is a little too strong, so I'm just going to go do some tweaks. I'm not going to bore you too much with all the little tweaks. I could spend hours showing you this project. But that's when things start to look fake, when you overdo shadows, so try to avoid that if you can. Okay, so lighting. So everything looks like it's from a different environment and different lighting, different contrast. So we're going to try to edit all of these layers to make them fuse them together so they all look like they belong together. Because we got all the core pieces together, but they still do not feel like they're a part of the same piece.